welcome to another episode of Instant Impact with Elyse Archer. I am your host, Elyse, and it is such an honor to share space with you today. So, question for you: how often do you find yourself throughout your week scrolling social media and looking at other people's feeds and starting to compare yourself with them and starting to look at what other people are doing and what they're sharing, whether it's a big accomplishment, maybe they got a big award, maybe they're speaking on the stage you want to speak on, maybe they're hitting their revenue goals and they just had their first $1 million year, and you're looking at them and seeing them do these things that you want to do, and you start to feel inadequate, and you start to feel like you're not good enough, and you start to compare. Guys, I know this happens for me. I'm confident it's happened for you before as well. And it's a big problem. And it's part of why I wanted to bring on my guest today, Hilary Billings, to talk about this problem. Now, Hilary is someone who I've gotten to know over the past year. She's one of our clients at Brand Builders Group. And she has striking beauty. When you meet her at first, you're kind of taken with her beauty. And then you get to know her and you realize how incredible and this depth that she has to her, and she has such a beautiful soul and heart. And she's someone who I've come to just love and adore as I've gotten to know her. But part of why I wanted her to come on and share today is that her whole message with her brand is about how we can overcome feelings of inadequacy and develop what she calls red carpet confidence. And Hilary has such an incredible background from going from being actually a burn survivor to winning Miss Nevada, being an on-camera host, interviewing celebrities like Mark Cuban, Alicia Keys. I mean, you name it, she's probably interviewed them. She's very much in the public eye. She does viral videos. She does videos that have had literally over 1 million views. And she shares from the heart the challenges that she personally has had with overcoming inadequacy, even in these moments that I call them our Facebook moments, right? What do we share publicly with the world? Even in moments where other people would look at her from the outside in and say, she's got it all. She's totally confident. She never struggles with inadequacy. And she shares how she really has throughout her life, but she teaches how she's worked to overcome that and gives some very tactical steps and tools that you can use as you work to raise your public profile and make a greater impact in your space to overcome any sort of feelings of inadequacy or comparison, because those things really will kill your success. They will rob your joy, and we have to really get a grip on how they can hold us back. And so Hilary shares exactly how you can overcome that inadequacy today and start to really develop your own sense of red carpet confidence for you to be able to shine fully and show up in your full expression as you build your brand, make your impact, become more visible, and really make your greatest impact and leave your legacy in the world. And so I am so thrilled to introduce her to you. You are going to love her. You're going to want to go connect with her on all social. And she shares some special resources that she has for you as well at the end of the interview. So you'll want to listen all the way to the end for that. But can't wait for you to meet my guest today, Hilary Billings. Hilary Billings, it is such an honor and so much fun to have you join today on the Instant Impact podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Well, I think it's so exciting to have you on the show, because when people go, and I just kind of did an intro to talk about everything that you've done and your background and your career. And when people go check you out online, or even when they know you personally, I mean, you are someone who is so impressive with what you've accomplished, whether it's Miss Nevada, or a red carpet host, interviewing people like Alicia Keys and Mark Cuban, all the way to you being a really successful entrepreneur and businesswoman. And part of what I love about your brand and what you're all about is, even with all of those accolades and achievements and accomplishments, you're really open about your own personal struggles with inadequacy. And I would love to hear from you, because I think you can be such an amazing example of how we can kind of deal with this, and the fact that it shows up for everyone. Tell us a little bit of your backstory, and where did inadequacy kind of show up, and how did that lead you to where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That's such kind words that you had there. I think I've always been a perfectionist growing up, and I think that the perfectionistic tendencies and for ambitious people, for starters, you're always going to find yourself trying to compare along the way, which leads to more inadequacy. I think the first time it really showed up as a full grown monster that I recognized was when I was rejected from 14 graduate school programs. I was the number one graduate from UNLV out of 5,000 students. I had a 3.98 GPA, and I was rejected from every PhD program that I had applied to. I thought my life was over and that was the end and I was going to be a failure and there was nowhere to go from there. So in that moment, and there was one particular letter, and I bring this up because it just helped to like hit the nail on the head for me as far as what was the problem, which was the rejection letter was actually mailed and addressed to somebody else, and they had crossed out the name and put in mine, and they misspelled my name in the process. So it just felt like, oh, I don't even deserve my own rejection letter. I'm not worthy, which was so frustrating. And I think at that age, when you're so young and you have this dream and you're hoping for something and you deal with these obstacles, it really makes you feel like other people don't believe in you. And that was kind of my first real experience with overcoming adversity. A few years later, I ended up as a travel blogger. I took off to Nicaragua shortly thereafter, because what else do you do when you get 14 rejection letters? And that started a really incredible journey of me writing about travel and connecting with people internationally. And from that, I became a travel writer and started working with USA Today. And it was during this time, as I was traveling, I just gotten back from living with the firewalkers in Fiji, and it seemed like things were starting to blaze this new trail and this new path. And I was hit with a malfunctioning firework on the 4th of July, and I suffered second and third degree burns to my chest and my stomach. And so it was very interesting to suddenly have this body image inadequacy come up about not feeling feminine or beautiful, not knowing when I would feel feminine or beautiful again, or if I would look normal, and really having to grapple with that internally as well as external perceptions. And it was through this experience that I decided to enter a beauty pageant, because nothing sounded more terrifying than being on stage in a bikini and having someone judge me based upon my appearance. So did that. And I had never competed in a pageant before. And I ended up winning, which was fabulous. And I went on to work with the Burn Foundation, the Burn Institute, be an advocate for Camp Beyond the Scars and burn survivors, and really trying to spread the message of you don't have to be flawless to feel beautiful. And as I continued along my path here and this not so very straight line of my career, I've just realized more and more that inadequacy is such a part of what holds us back in our lives and keeps us from developing the confidence to actually have the ambition to go after what we want. And when you're able to embrace the adversity and able to embrace the inadequacy, you can just skyrocket forward and align with your goals and what you really want to do and the people that you want to be around, versus trying to gain acceptance from this external world. And what ended up happening is, over the course of the years and working on red carpets and award shows and behind the scenes videos for USA Today, producing for E! News, walking in LA Fashion Week for numerous haute couture designers, I just realized this problem was so prevalent and we all were experiencing it. And we even see it just blatantly on social media. The studies are out there that are showing that we all are dealing with this on some level all the time, but no one's talking about it. And being someone that loves identifying with anything but the superficial and that loves to have these types of authentic connections and conversations, I really wanted to be a catalyst in a movement to have this talk about inadequacy and how to overcome it and what we can do and how we need to better set our behaviors and intentions to ensure that we're setting ourselves up for success, and to just remove that isolation and feeling like we're the only ones that are dealing with it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's so interesting as you talk. So this is super fascinating to me. You're reminding me of a day I had about 2 weeks ago where I was
Okay.
doing some coaching with a lot of my clients. So you're one of our brand builders clients. And so you know a lot of our clients and who they are. And the typical person who's working with us is pretty accomplished. And I
Sure.
had this day where I was coaching, 7-figure entrepreneurs and multiple award-winning authors and keynote speakers and people from I think anyone's outside perspective would think this person is so confident, they've got it going on. And it was such a weird day because on every single call, I had, I think, 8 calls that day, each and every one of them was feeling so insecure about
Mm.
their ability to get to this next level. And they were comparing themselves to other people who they thought were more accomplished than them. And it really, it drove home for me so much of what you just said, which was in your work with these celebrities and these public figures, recognizing that even they struggle with feelings of inadequacy, and that's been so much of your journey too. And certainly it's been a piece of mine. So I would love to hear from you, just in the research you've done on this and in your own personal experience. How do we start to get past that? Like, what are some of the things we can be doing to start to maybe lovingly let go of the inadequacy and embrace our own confidence?
So I think the first thing that needs to happen, and the beautiful thing about what we're doing right now, is we need to have more conversations about it. It needs to be something that isn't so taboo to talk about. And I think everyone right now equates feeling inadequate with failure, or, because they're inadequate, they don't want to show that weakness, or they think it's a weakness, versus it's just part of a human emotion that initially was developed as part of evolution to keep us from, like, oh, I think I can jump that cliff. Like, no, you can't, don't do that. You're going to fall and die. But we don't need to worry about that as much anymore. And so our brain is constantly looking for ways that we can focus on these things that might hurt us or be bad, or find these comparisons to keep us alive. But now, because we aren't fighting saber-toothed tigers and we're not running for our lives, it's just continuously looking in this very evolutionary way for what's wrong. So we need to have these conversations, because I think, for starters, everyone feels alone. Everyone feels like they're the only ones that feel this way, especially when we look at things like social media, right? Where we have external appearances. This has definitely played a part in what's happening and why there's a rise in inadequacy and these feelings of loneliness, because we have the ability to compare ourselves to not only our friends and family, the Joneses next door, and our immediate peer group and our role models, but literally billions of people. Like, this is not, it's not as simple as it used to be. And we have the ability to see what's going on with others, but it's manicured problems. It's manicured content. It's the filtered photos and the highlight reels. We're only seeing what people want us to see, but we're comparing that to our internal feelings and emotions. So number one, we have to talk about it. Two, and you brought it up, comparison is the killer of joy. And anytime we're looking at our story and our journey versus somebody else without knowing the full backstory, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And that was a really interesting thing that kept cropping up in these celebrity interviews that I would do. And you would see these people that were so lauded and so just appreciated and respected by the public. And they are wonderful people. But it would be interesting to then have these conversations and realize, oh, they too struggle with anxiety, or they too have perfectionism issues, or they too have this quirk about them, or concern about what people think. And anytime that you put your internal feelings on the basis of the external values of somebody else is another issue. You want to ensure that you can build your confidence and affirm your own self-worth versus looking externally. And a lot of the celebrities that I've spoken with, they have that challenge where they're getting their confidence from an external source, which is why they need to continue to be in the spotlight as they are. And if you're able to align your mission with why you're doing something like that, like being in the public eye, then it's never going to be a problem for you. But if you're doing that, if you're in the public, if you're looking for the fame, if you're looking for the fortune, if you're looking for the success because you need someone else to clap for you, then that becomes a challenge. And we see that reflected in everyday life when people are looking for likes or comments and engagement on social media specifically.
So totally agree. And one of the things that I'm curious about from your own personal story is the experience you had going from being a burn survivor to then standing on stage, in
Yeah.
a swimsuit. Like, so there's a couple lessons I want to draw from that and get your perspective on. One
Sure.
is are you telling us that one of the best ways to overcome inadequacy is to literally do the thing that scares you most and show up in that way? So let's start with that question. I want to kind of hear your thoughts on whether that takeaway is right or not.
Absolutely. I certainly believe that a great confidence builder is to step outside your comfort zone. I mean, when I was traveling internationally, that was kind of my first taste of that. I had a lot of fear of the unknown and going places unknown and meeting people unknown. And then once I started doing that, I was able to then look back at the previous experience and say, okay, I've been, to this country, and that was scary, but I made it work by myself. And so now I'm kind of scared going here, but I've already survived and made this happen, and I can rely on myself. So this is going to be okay. And I think that anytime you put yourself in a position to show yourself and allow your internal self to step up and be there for you, it's only going to reinforce that you have your back. And it's interesting, I've done a lot of interviews for my podcast where I've asked celebrities, pro athletes about this specific thing, like, how do you deal with a challenging moment? And they always look backwards and say, I would have thought 5 years ago this thing was the thing that was going to break me, but I made it through that. So now when I'm looking at this moment in this football game, or this challenging relationship situation, I can tell myself, I don't know the outcome, but I know it's going to be okay. And if you start there, that's the first step. So absolutely do what scares you, if you're willing to live with that. And I think it's also with how you frame it, because when I competed, it wasn't about me winning and it wasn't about me losing. I had a very intentional mindset going into this of, I'm going to have an adventure and I'm doing this for self-growth. And I think oftentimes we forget that life is always about self-growth, and we tend to think it's about arriving. And so because of that, we do a lot of gap measuring of, well, I'm here, but I'm not here yet. And that is another great stealer of confidence and a breeder of inadequacy. If you're able to find the ways that you're progressing and having that self-growth along the way, then every experience becomes more about having a curiosity as to what's going to happen, and kind of looking at your own story from a third person versus being about, I need to win, or I have to do this really scary thing. And it becomes more of an adventure.
So you ended up speaking to my second question about that experience of competing, because I love your message of not depending on external validation in
Right.
order to feel confident. And in that type of a situation, there can be so much pressure on, what are other people going to think? Am I going to win? So it sounds like the mindset that you really cultivated was one of, no matter what, I'm winning here because I'm showing up for myself, and it's going to be an adventure, and kind of like taking the pressure off a little bit to get the crown, so to speak. So is that about right?
Absolutely. And it was something that I ran into a lot throughout my year. And even as a county title holder, people have preconceived notions about beauty queens, about a lot of different types of people, right? And it was interesting to see when I would go to events, how people would react to me. And there was usually one of two reactions. The first one being, I was the most beautiful girl from the state of Nevada, and I was super accomplished, and I was somebody they needed to know and be around. Or I was just looking to be a trophy wife and to find a husband, and I had no ambitions and I wasn't intelligent. And clearly I did this because I was low intellect. And it was then very interesting to see how, based upon interacting with me, everything kind of fell somewhere in the middle. And I would get the comment a lot, you don't look like a beauty queen. And at first I was highly offended by this. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't look like a blow up doll, not like your perceived notion. I have like platinum blonde hair. Like, what is it about me that makes you think I don't deserve to hold this title? And then I realized this is actually a beautiful thing. And it's all just about perception, because what I was doing was breaking down other people's stereotypes. I mean, I had my own preconceived notions of pageant queens before I competed. And then being able to see how so many women wanted to leverage this for business, for community service, to share their message in their platform. There wasn't a single competitor that didn't have another motive to be there. I mean, winning's nice. We all like to wear pretty dresses and take photos and have that attention, but there was so much more behind that. And I think that if you're able to tap into what the motives are, as well as being able to have this experience where it's not about you winning, but about how much you can grow within it, and knowing that you're going to be able to be faced with all this external judgment, then it sets you up for resilience for life. I mean, that year of having people think those things and then learning how to just let that go and do what I needed to do was so empowering for me.
You mentioned, so I want to piggyback off of something you said. You talked
Sure.
about how you and the other women who were competing had a message, had something they wanted to get out into the world. And I know for your brand now, so much of your message is about this concept of red carpet confidence, which
Yeah.
I just love that, by the way. It's so
Thank
fun.
you.
Right. So I'd love to hear, just from your perspective, what does red carpet confidence mean to you?
So red carpet confidence is that feeling that you have when you are at the top of your game and you just feel like you're on cloud nine with your physical appearance. You've got the attitude going on, the lights are on you, you've had the 3 hours of hair and makeup, you've had that gown, you've got all these lights flashing, and you just feel so pristine and glamorous. And the reason that I chose this name is because most of life isn't that way. And my goal and what I'm doing with overcoming inadequacy through this Red Carpet Confidence brand, helping people through keynote speaking, my podcast, Red Carpet Confidence, is helping them to gain authentic confidence every day where they can affirm their own self-worth. So no matter what the situation, if they've got a baby on their hip and there's spit up on their shoulder, they still feel that kind of glamorous confidence radiating and emanating from the inside out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, you gotta give us some of the tips, because one of the things that I think comes up as for anyone who's listening, a lot of the audience is building a personal brand, cares about making an impact,
Yeah,
on becoming more visible, and that opens up all these opportunities for us to feel more inadequate. So what are
totally.
ways that we can be intentional about creating and cultivating this red carpet confidence in our lives as we work to become more visible in our space?
So I think the first thing that I had to learn, I was very lucky to have some content, comedic monologue videos go viral last year. And when my first video had 1 million views, I celebrated about 5 minutes, and then I started reading the comment section. And it was terrible for my personal confidence and having had achieved this moment to see what was being said about me. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about this specific topic. And there's a couple of things that come to mind. One, you're always going to have people that are trying to break you down, because what we're doing, like hosting a podcast, going out and speaking, they aren't hard things to do. We don't need a degree to go and do this. We don't need special training, and anyone can start one. Now, that there is a difference between, starting and doing one well, and that's a big gap, but anyone can do this. And I think that what tends to happen is when you see people being successful at things like a monologue video online on a Facebook, other people start to have their own feelings of inadequacy come up. And so their goal is to break you down, because if they make it seem like what you're doing isn't a big deal, then it just reinforces that they don't have to do anything. So just know that when those moments happen, it's because you're doing something remarkable with the ordinary that others are just trying to justify why they're not doing. And keeping that in mind, because you're automatically going to have haters. I have someone I interviewed on my podcast. He does billions of views a month on his social media channels. And this is just something that he has to push through. And despite that, he has 50 million followers. So those people are going to crop up, but you also want to ensure that your attention and your time isn't going to those that aren't in the arena. There's a fabulous Teddy Roosevelt quote that Brene Brown references often. And I'm going to totally paraphrase and chop this up here, but essentially, pay attention to those that are in the ring fighting, that are, putting their blood, sweat, and tears and putting themselves out there. And it's funny because those people are going to be the people that are encouraging and supportive and want to help you. And the peanut gallery, those that are up in the stands that aren't doing anything, are going to be the ones that are, armchair quarterbacking the situation. And they just need to drown out that noise. There will always be those people. Trust the ones that are in it and doing it with you. And that'll dramatically reduce the amount of opinions you have to listen to, for one, or need to even pay attention to. As far as what we can do to start intentionally living more in a more confident, authentically confident way, and to break down the inadequacy, there's a couple of things, and I talk about these in my free workbook, which you can find on my website. The first one being intentionally utilizing social media. It's so easy to get stuck in the trap of just scrolling and going through and seeing people's random updates and just suddenly comparing yourself to what they're doing or the car they're driving or what accomplishment they've had, and comparing that against your own progress. And that'll automatically always bring your confidence down. So making sure that you've got a plan when you're going on. How are you using it? Are you using it for business, to check in with friends, to post a status, to share some content? You can set time limits, but I'm more about just making sure that you're intentional with the reasons why. And if you catch yourself, oh my gosh, and I've gone in this rabbit hole, pull yourself out, stop, and start over. And there's lots of great tools now available both on Facebook and Instagram to help keep you from getting lost in the feeds, which is fabulous. The second biggest thing I would recommend is gap measuring. So going from, especially as high achievers, we've got these lofty big goals and these dreams that we're working on, which are fabulous, but they can take years to come to fruition, and they might not, at least not in the form that we think they're going to. So in that case, we want to make sure that we're celebrating the progress along the way, because all you can really do is hope that you're improving and becoming a better person and more skilled in your craft from yesterday. So if you're waiting to celebrate, if you're waiting to feel confident until you've hit this marker, one, that marker may never show up. And two, even if it does, it's not going to bring you the satisfaction and fulfillment that you want, because you're not celebrating how amazing you are already. So it's about affirming that worth along the way. Another thing which is really important is your content diet. I will never tell someone to go on a diet except when it comes to what you're ingesting with your mind. So that can be conversations, words that you're utilizing to talk about yourself or others, what you're watching on the news or what you're watching for fun. I mean, I had a girlfriend who loved shows like Grey's Anatomy, but funny enough, after Thursday night, come Friday morning, her life was slightly more dramatic, and she would have a lot of issues with her boyfriend in their relationship, just depending upon what was happening with the show the night before. And you might think that sounds a little crazy, but we are so subject to the environment that we're around and what we're showing ourselves, and that affects the perception of our world. So it's really important, if you are what you eat, that you're putting in positive content, things that feed you and nourish your mind and soul. And this all gonna be different for everybody. Like, no one's gonna have the same exact type of diet. What works for somebody may not work for somebody else, and that's okay. And just keeping a read and having that awareness as to what you're ingesting is affecting you. So those are the top 3 ways that I would say to start making sure that you're intentionally living to build authentic confidence, because we got to get away from the external validation as what gives us confidence.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And hilarious side note, you're talking about that I love the idea of the content diet, and
Yeah.
how what we consume intellectually affects us. I was having this conversation with my husband, who, like two
Yeah.
nights ago, where he's been on this kick lately where he's obsessed with watching Queer Eye, which
Ah,
and I love it too. We love watching.
yeah.
One of the things I started to notice is he's starting to talk like the main
Yeah.
person there. And I said, babe, I love you so much. I love this show, but it's not working for me when you
Please stop. Yeah.
but I could literally see his physicality starting to change
Yeah.
to be like this guy on TV. And it's just crazy how much we don't realize it affects us and it impacts us so deeply in our core.
Totally. I did some research on this when I was getting my degree in psychology about in-group and out-groups, specifically among women. So we called it fat talk, which is, when women talk to each other and say things like, oh my God, I'm so fat, I need to lose 5 pounds. And it's interesting to see how in groups of people, especially when you want to feel accepted, you all start to take on each other's values. So it's really important that you're paying attention to those values. You mimic each other's behaviors. We are monkeys in a sense, and we want to feel included and accepted. So we will take on the behavior mechanics of those around us to be included. Absolutely. So it doesn't surprise me that happens. I get around someone that's Canadian and I start having like the Canadian accents, and it's all the boots and hays, and it's just a thing that just happens naturally. And even now I've got this like weird thing going on in my voice just thinking about it.
Well, you
Oh,
sound fabulous with it. So
thank
I
you.
So you have just so much wisdom
Oh,
in
thank
this
you.
topic, and I would love if you could share with our listeners, for anyone who's really committed to overcoming inadequacy and developing their own red carpet confidence, where can they connect with you? And I know you've got some resources as well that can benefit them. So tell us like all the places where we can go to find you and the great resources that you're offering.
Find me on all the things. I'm not hard to find. You can research me on Google, and I'm pretty easy to find there. So HilaryBillings.com, that's HilaryBillings.com. There you can get my free workbook on how to build quick confidence by overcoming the 4 major confidence killers. Easy workbook, super fun, lots of information that's all scientifically based. You can connect with me on Facebook at Hilary Billings Official, and there'll be a Facebook watch page coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Instagram, Hilary_Billings, and Hilary at HilaryBillings.com. Email me. Let me know what's going on, how I can help you. On my podcast, I accept questions about inadequacy from my listeners, and if you have a specific question, I would be thrilled to answer it on the podcast for you.
And guys, her social media is amazing, and it's super inspiring as well. So I would say for anyone who's looking to be motivated and uplifted and inspired, Hilary has so many amazing resources on her social feeds and the workbook and her podcast to really help you do that. And so just one final question for you as we wrap here, really just any final words of wisdom or speaking from the heart for anyone listening who really wants to develop and cultivate this next level of red carpet confidence.
First and foremost, you're not alone. Everybody is feeling this way on some level. And I think it's really important that we all share in that. Have a conversation with those around you about how you're feeling, and you'll immediately see that connection happening and that this is not an isolated event. You're not an island. And we can all help each other by working on our dialogue, improving that content diet, and working on ensuring that the external isn't what brings you that internal confidence. So finding ways that you can affirm your own self-worth, and I've got lots of ways to do that I can help you with, is going to be paramount. But you are capable, you've gotten this far, and you have been so successful. And by the way, you're still alive. So you've been competent enough and confident enough in your life to stay alive and continue living this beautiful life that you're at thus far. So you're going to figure it out.
I love it. Such an important message, such an important topic. Thank you for opening up this conversation that's so new.
Thank
Really
you so much.